And I mean, we've seen this, right? Nobody is exempt from challenge, from adversity, from obstacles. We all have it in our life. It's going to come sooner or later. That's what the 41 life is, though. Overcoming those challenges, overcoming those obstacles as they come at us and coming out stronger on the other side. So that's what we're here for. That's what we're about. We want to provide encouragement. We want to help people to keep going through those times, and we want to have some fun along the way. This is the 41 life. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back for another week. This is episode 14, and as always, we are excited to have you guys with us, and we are really excited just to get into another episode. Just a heads up for anybody listening in real time, we are getting toward the end of the year, and the holidays are quickly coming on us, and so this is actually going to be our last episode for a couple weeks, our last episode of 2024. For the people that are listening in the future, you can look back and think about this time. Hopefully everything was going well. But yeah, we'll pick up in January, but we just wanted to give a heads up that we know the holiday season is hectic and crazy, and we feel that too. And we're thrilled that you guys have been with us on this ride so far, and we can't wait to open up in 2025 with more of it. But with that being said, how's everything going? How was the week leading up to Christmas and the store? And
yeah, it's good. I feel like you said, life is moving very fast. I feel like we've got like so many Christmas parties, and my birthday was this past weekend and our anniversary is Wednesday, so lots on the agenda. But I feel like overall this has been like the most peaceful Christmas season and joyful Christmas season that I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, I don't think we've really had over the last few years that I think we talked about it around Thanksgiving, but Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's always been either in treatment, getting ready to go in treatment, and this is, I think, the first true holiday season that we've gotten to just kind of breathe and be able to enjoy the time in a few years.
And it's not even like we're out of the woods by any means. Like, you have a scan coming up January 13th. Like, we're still very much like living in the reality of our story. But I feel like you sent me this image the other day, and it said, you don't heal so that you can continue to endure. You heal so you can let joy back in your life again.
Yep.
And I felt like that was just so true. Like, I never really thought about healing that way. And just thinking about like how peaceful and joyful I feel like in the midst of our story, but being able to just enjoy like the break and, not currently having to worry about anything, like, to me just represents like what a healer God is.
Yeah.
Because like there were so many times in the past few years where I was like, I will never be happy again. Like, this has just cut me too deep. Like, I cannot recover from this emotionally. Like, I'll never be able to let joy back in again. And I feel like every single time I've thought that, like, joy has been able to come back in again.
Yeah.
And I think that is what allows me to experience joy in the present, even though there's some scary things like up ahead, like a scan and, a lot of what ifs. Because I feel like so many times God has shown me like he's a healer.
Yeah.
So like no matter how deep it cuts, like he can heal me. Yeah. And he can like allow me to have joy back in my life again. And I feel like another thing too is just like he's shown me that he's here. Like we've shared some stories about how he's just like revealed himself, and I feel like things are a lot less scary when he's with you.
Yeah.
Because the hardest times have been when I felt like he didn't care at all and he wasn't even looking our way. But I feel like so many times over and over he's shown like, no, like I'm literally right here with you.
Yeah.
So I feel like that has allowed us to have a lot of peace.
Yeah, it's interesting, that you brought that up because I was listening to another podcast the other day. One of my favorite Christian rappers, KB, he has a podcast called Southside Rabbi, and he not shockingly, was my number one artist on Spotify this year. I listened to him all the time, and crazy enough, I actually met him randomly in an airport
Yeah.
coming from Baltimore. He was finishing up with the show, and I think I was coming back from Fan Fest or maybe an event that was going on that I was up there for probably 2 days, and it was a quick trip up
Yeah.
and back. And anyways, all that to say, I've always been a big fan of his. Meeting him, he was an awesome dude. Like, just you could tell right away that he was genuine. So I've obviously been a fan of his music. Getting to meet him was cool, and his podcast has some really cool insight on different things. And he was talking, him and the co-host, his name's Amin, and they were talking about how like this story in the Old Testament that I feel like really was cool to me.
Hmm.
It's the story of Elisha, and they're basically going into war. And one of his servants, or military commanders, whoever it was, I don't remember exactly, came up to him and was like, basically like, man, what are we gonna do? Like, look at all these people and look at us. We have no chance. We're surrounded, and they're gonna like destroy us. Like, how are you not freaking out? Like, what are we gonna do? And Elisha prayed that God would open this guy's eyes to the army that was actually there, and he got to see like the legions of angels that were actually
Hmm.
surrounding um, their enemies. And so it was just like, as you're talking about that and kind of hearing that story, I think it goes hand in hand, because it's really cool that there's so like when we get glimpses of God's presence, it's almost like a glimpse into him seeing that angel army that's kind of like,
Yeah.
man, like, there's so much more on our side than we realize. And sometimes going through hard times and the challenges and difficulties like we've been through and we're talking about sometimes are what you need to almost get a glimpse or get
Hmm.
your eyes open to how big God is, that he is actually with us and is way more powerful than anything we're going to
Hmm.
face. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
little side tangent off of
Hmm.
that, but yeah.
Well, and I feel like I heard a long time ago the safest place that you can be is in the purpose of God
Hmm.
or the will of God. And like, I feel like we have been validated that like we are in His will. So like, no matter how scary or how bad it gets, like, there's like a feeling of safety that comes with that. And I always think of like that Zach Bryan lyric, the devil can scrap, but the Lord is one.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, I know no one wants to think about death or anything, but like at the end of the day, like we're all gonna die.
Yeah.
But to know that that ultimate victory like has been won is so like peaceful and reassuring. And I feel like we've talked about this a little bit like in our life group, but just kind of how like our culture doesn't like to talk about death. And
Hmm.
like whenever someone dies, it's like incredibly jarring and shocking, which of course it is. I mean, but I think ultimately just knowing that like the ultimate victory has been won, like as scary as like battles can be here on earth, like there is comfort that comes with that. Like no matter how bad it gets, at the end of the day, like the victory is done. I
Hmm.
don't have to wonder. And I feel like we've been able to like really grasp that. And we've had to grasp that because
Yeah,
we've
I
been
don't know that we've
faced,
had too much of a
yeah,
choice.
we've been faced with these really like tough realities and harsh realities. And I feel like just seeing how God has like sustained us and carried us through. It's like we keep getting stronger and stronger. Like you'd think we would keep getting weaker and weaker, and sometimes it does feel like that.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I don't know, we like dust ourselves off and we're like, oh wait, I'm actually stronger now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's the same process, and I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit more about this, but like I've been back in the gym and working out, and I've been thinking about how we've talked a lot about it. Like, I know you guys can't see physically the difference. I mean, you could see like my face and everything if you're watching video, but like physically, I am very different than I was 2 months ago. And just
Mm-hmm.
understanding, how that works. Like when you're building muscle, it's literally having to be ripped apart. It hurts. It's uncomfortable. It
Mm-hmm.
makes you sore. It makes you tired. Your body has to repair. And if you give it the protein it needs, the carbs, the nutrients to be able to repair, it's going to be stronger than it was before.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the same thing how God works with us. Like, you can't grow
Mm-hmm.
if you're not moving. And the only way you're going to move is sometimes to go through, a storm of life.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's to walk through the fire on the hot coals.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's, you know, just to be able to have a casual stroll in, I guess, a meadow or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm sure David said that somewhere in Psalms, but like, there's all different times and seasons. And I think it's been looking back, at least for me, it's been really reassuring to see that like God was with us the whole time. And it never was a time of like, I don't think we ever felt abandoned through it. I think that
I
there
did.
were,
I had moments where I felt abandoned. He didn't abandon me, but I felt like that.
yeah. Well, and you know, maybe to that point though, I think sometimes we mistake lack of action for abandonment.
Mhm.
Where sometimes, I mean, we're not parents, but I've seen my parents, I've seen your
Mhm.
parents. I know enough people around us who are parents. Sometimes you have to let your kids, you know, do something that like is going to be uncomfortable or difficult for them in the moment, but they have to learn, you know, through those times, through those circumstances. And as a parent, you're always going to be there to pick them up and help them, you know, through it and to get to the other side. But that doesn't always take away from the discomfort that may come with that. And I feel like that's kind of,
Mhm. Well, and also too, at the end of the day, like he can't protect us. Well, he can, but he can't protect us from everything down here because that would be heaven.
yeah,
You know, like there would be no need for heaven and no need for free will if he just protected us and we were just like little robots that like never were harmed and never
yeah,
had any choices to,
yeah,
end up hurting ourselves. But
yeah. God's ultimately like the highest power, the highest authority. But to that point, like, I mean, the devil, the enemy, like he's here and he's wanting to create as much
mhm.
destruction and wreak as much havoc as possible. And so, like, I think we do need to be aware of that and keep that in mind. I don't think it's something we need to dwell on because as believers, like, we know that the ultimate victory has already been won. Like, we can operate from a place of power, from a place of victory, from a
Yeah.
place of truth. And with that, I was telling Devin last week, I was on a walk and I felt like I was kind of like just, you know, just there with me. That's the best way to put it. Like, you know, I was just kind of being still, just trying to like, I didn't have any music on. I didn't have like I was just walking down the road and I'm sure I looked really weird to the people driving by, but there was something about it where I just kind of felt like that's what God was saying. Like, just be still. Like, I have some things I want to tell you. And one of the things that I felt like I was hearing was the importance, especially right now, for everything going on, that having truth and being rooted in his word is more important now than it is ever. And
Mhm.
to me, what that tells me is there's probably about to be some type of, you know, like attack coming. You know what I mean? Not
Mhm.
necessarily that it's going to be something that's overwhelming or overtaking me, but it's something that I need to have ammunition and firepower to fight back against. And so I don't think that's something for just right now that's important, but it's something that especially right now I've been focusing on and hearing. And so
Yeah.
I know this, you know, like we said, we're going into the holiday season, and this is for some people a really difficult time of the year. I mean, sometimes it's navigating family. Sometimes it's just, you know, thinking back on the year, and sometimes it's just feeling, you know, loneliness, you know, just whatever trouble may be going on. I think that's a truth that, you know, I think is something not coincidental that was said at the
Mhm.
time it was. And so, uh, if you're out there alongside me, like, I encourage you to just stay rooted in what God has to say. And
Yeah.
I think that He's there. He wants to talk to you. He wants to be with you and walk through whatever difficulty, whatever struggle you're going through. But I think he also wants to celebrate with you. Like, this
Mhm.
is on the flip side of that with Christmas coming up. This is an exciting time of year as well. I mean, we get to, you know, kind of celebrate the start of like not just not the start of the redemption story, but the start of what we got to kind of see tangibly happen on earth with Jesus's life. And so I think in the times of excitement, like he wants to celebrate there with you too. Like he doesn't want you just in the good times or just in the bad times. He wants you in all of it. I saw something that was really cool that, that helped me a lot. And I'm sure I'm probably not the only one. Like, God didn't come to save this future version of you. He didn't come to save the cleaned up, the put together, like A+ version. Like, he wants us exactly where we're at, and he knows, because he's outside of time, exactly what we're going to do and how everything's going to play out. So, if it's something that, as you're listening to this, that you're wrestling with, just know, like, he's there in the good and the bad. And yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I mentioned this a minute ago and I've mentioned it so many times. Like, the hardest parts of this journey for me were when I felt like God didn't even care that I was going through this and that He didn't even see me. Like, all of this aimless harm was just coming my way and no one was going to protect me and no one cared. And it's so funny because we've been talking about this a little bit this week, but there is a God moment, if you will, that happened to me. One of my favorite, I think one of my favorite God moments that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's so, you're just gonna have to stick with me while I tell it. But
It's worth sticking with. It's a good story.
so I got this really nice pair of sunglasses and I like splurged on them. I was really excited about it and I lost them. And I like searched my car, my parents' car, my sister's car, your car, my sister's house, my parents' house, my aunt's house, like texted in the family group chat, like, has anyone seen these sunglasses? So months go by and I'm still thinking about these sunglasses and I'm still like upset about it. So I get in the car one morning and the sun is just like blasting me in the eyes. And I have another pair of sunglasses, don't worry, but I'm like mourning these sunglasses on this particular day.
As you can tell, this was her favorite pair.
So I was just sitting in my car and I was like, man, like those sunglasses. And I just had this thought in my mind, like, why don't you ask God to show you where they are? And I was like, well, that's silly, but okay. So I just prayed. I was like, God, if these sunglasses are somewhere around here, will you just show me where they are? And I got this feeling like I needed to get out of my car and look underneath the seats.
When she got to the store and stopped, not in the middle of
No,
traffic.
this was before I left.
Okay.
This is before I
Okay.
even left the
I
driveway.
was gonna say, no, she's not driving down the road at a red light, getting
Yeah.
out or anything
So
like that.
I get out of the car. I look under the driver's seat from the front, from the back. You can't really get anything stuck under the back seat from like the way that it is. So I was like, well, that was stupid. Like, I shouldn't. Why did I just do that? And so I get in my car and I go to work and I don't think about it. So the day passes, I get home, I pull back into the driveway, and like I have so much stuff in my passenger seat that I'm like, there's no way I can lug all of this over to the driver's seat. Like, I'm gonna have to go around to the passenger side and get it all out. I don't know why, but I feel like girls always have so much stuff to carry in.
I think it's because you have a purse,
I feel
and
like you never have. Like, I always have like I got like 3 water bottles and like a
I,
bag and
I really do think it's because of the purse. I think that
yeah,
you have that bag that you
that
can carry
capacity.
stuff in, and I got, two. Well, I guess I got 2 front pockets and 2 back
Yeah,
pockets in my arms. Like, I don't want to lug too much around, but
yeah. So, anyways, I go around to the passenger seat of the car. And I'm like trying to get like all my stuff and I'm like super overstimulated because I always am when I'm carrying a bunch of stuff in. And I drop my phone and I literally hear my phone bounce and it goes under my car. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, ooh, crawling out of my skin. So it's so far under the car that I have to get on my belly to get it out and like scoot under the car. So I finally get it out and I'm like getting ready to like stand up again. Like I'm like on my hand and my knee. And I look over under the passenger seat and there are my sunglasses sitting underneath the passenger seat next to another pair of sunglasses that I lost a year before that.
mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you've like experienced God, like you're going to know what I mean. It felt like he was standing right next to me. And I literally just started laughing. Like, it was almost like he was just like, there's your sunglasses that you asked for. Oh, and another pair that you didn't even ask me for, but I know you want, like, that
Yeah.
you forgot about. And I think about this story all the time on a weekly basis. Like it's like my go-to that I come back to because I'm like, I asked God to show me a pair of sunglasses so meaningless, and he did. So if he's telling me no to something and he's not answering me, like there's a reason.
Yeah.
Like he cared enough to show me where my sunglasses were because that does nothing for his kingdom. That does
Hmm.
nothing for him. Like I wanted my sunglasses. He showed them to me. Like that was a benefit that only came to me.
Hmm.
And I just think back on that story all the time when I start telling myself lies of like God doesn't care. He only cares about what like furthers his kingdom. He doesn't care about your joy at all. He doesn't care, all this stuff. I can be like, well, that's not true because he showed me where my sunglasses were.
Yeah.
Like, and I kid you not, I told everyone that I saw for the next week about this story. I'm like, you're not gonna believe what happened. I asked God to show me my sunglasses. He did. Like, and everyone was like, wow, like, but it just had so much meaning to me.
Hmm.
Like, I just felt like God was like, don't ever question that I don't care what you want.
Yeah.
And don't question that I don't care when you're not joyful. Like, I want you to be joyful. Like, I care about the desires of your heart.
Hmm.
So whenever I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've prayed for a baby for years, and you keep saying no. Like I prayed for my husband to not have cancer anymore. You keep saying no. I've prayed for my store to do better. You keep saying no, and I feel like I've seen enough of him, and like I've seen his character enough to know that like that's not him not caring about me. Like I do trust that. I get mad at him because I'm like, I know you can fix this. Like I've seen you do miracles. I've seen you, you know, heal people out of nowhere and bless people's businesses, and people who've had infertility for years just have the baby. Like I know you can do it. So the fact that you're not is a little aggravating. But what helps me get through it is knowing that it's not because he doesn't love me.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that kind of is, I would say, the definition of a relationship.
Yeah.
In church, either this week or last week, we're going through, kind of some of the Old Testament prophecies coming to fruition in the New Testament through Jesus. And we were in Luke, I think it was chapter 1, it might have been chapter 2, but one of the verses basically says like he cares about the desires of our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that lines up with, it on multiple levels. One, if you didn't express like I'm kind of mad at you right now,
Yeah.
like it's the same way as we're sitting here talking. Like if you asked me to empty the dishwasher and you came home and I didn't do it, you probably would be a little frustrated with me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't say anything to me, like I probably knew I was supposed to unload it, but I didn't. And it just
Well, and
create
also,
like,
what if there was like a valid reason why you didn't unload the dishwasher,
right.
but we didn't communicate about it?
Yeah, it would just turn
Because
into,
I feel like God reveals things to you,
yeah, and
like
it would
in
turn into a
time.
passive aggressive thing
Yeah.
potentially where, like you said, maybe there was something that came up. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know what a practical reason for that would be. That would that I would say I just need to stop being lazy. But yeah, I mean, I think that like he cares about, like you were saying with the sunglasses, like that's a small thing, but it meant something to you.
Well, and I feel like I always kind of believed this lie that like everything that God did was to further his kingdom. And granted, like that is what he does. But I feel like I left out the part where he loves us.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's a big part of it too. Like both of those things I do believe he considers when he has like a plan for your life.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
yeah,
The sunglasses story is one of my favorites.
yeah,
And maybe if you're ever feeling you're questioning God's love for you, you can think about the sunglass story. Or maybe he can give you your own sunglass story. I don't know.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we all have our moments when things like that come up. I think something that we talked about last year at our men's retreat, something that kind of kept coming, or I guess it was this year at our men's retreat because we're still in 2024. But um, a big concept that kept like seemed like it was reoccurring was be still.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important because like God reveals himself when we're still. And I think that that's a big tactic of the enemy is to make
Mm-hmm.
us busy, to make us think that we don't need God. Like either occupy our mind with stuff or occupy it with internal battles.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we just have to calm ourselves down, whether it be mentally calming ourselves down or actually carving out some time in our day, or maybe both,
Mm-hmm.
to just kind of be there and say, okay, like I just want to have some time with God. I like just tell me what you want me to know. Like teach me what you want me to be taught. Show me through your word what you want me to know. Reveal yourself in whatever way you want. And I think the more that we press into that, I think the more he's going to show himself to us
Mm-hmm.
because he wants that. He wants the relationship
Yeah.
with us. And I think it's the same way. Like, I mean, this is a crazy time of year. And our anniversary is coming up here in just a few days, which is exciting. But like we have to make time not just for our anniversary, you know what I mean? Our anniversary is
Mm-hmm.
kind of the big milestone of look what we did, you know, up to
Yeah.
this point. But if we didn't make time on a daily, weekly, like regular basis to just kind of catch up and talk and like, hey, how's everything going? How are you feeling about this? Like, this is hard, this is good, you know, like to celebrate good times as well and to go through, you know, some of the difficult times together and just to check in, but to carve out time and just invest in the relationship that we
Mm-hmm.
have. Like that's what strengthens it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, I mean, it's the foundational elements. I remember this was something that was brought up in college quite a bit is, you know, we would always talk about like how, you know, these huge skyscrapers, like it's incredible, you know, architecturally, like engineering wise, like the fact that we can make all these huge buildings is incredible, but none of it matters if you don't go deep into the ground and have a strong foundation, because the second that some heavy winds come or, you know, just the wear and tear that comes with storms, like
Mm-hmm.
those buildings will erode immediately. And those concepts apply to our relationships with people, with our spouses, our significant other, whatever it may be. Like you have to invest and there will be return on that investment,
Mm-hmm.
but it's going to take a sacrifice.
One of the times when I heard God's voice audibly, but one of the very few times, I was like so low, like struggling to get through the day, honestly. Like, I mean, I felt like I was just like walking through quicksand. And I remember I laid down on our bedroom floor and I was like, I'm going to lay here until you talk to me. And I did. That's what I laid in silence. And I laid there for a long time. I don't know how long it was, but like I I asked him and I made time and I silenced the world around me because he's not going to be like when you're, you know, scrolling through TikTok like, "Hey, like got something for you. Like, could you just like turn your attention to me?" Like you've got to silence your environment and like ask for it cuz I feel like I've had a lot of people, you know, who've heard stories that I've told be like, "Gosh, I wish I could have that moment with God." Like, you know, I wish I could hear him the way that you've heard him or experience things. And I think a lot of it has to do with, well, I think it's two things. I think one, that God does draw near to the brokenhearted. Like we've talked
Mm-hmm.
about that. Like he's a father. So I feel like he just does that.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's going to be closer to you when you're hurting. He loves his kids. But also, I think the circumstances that we've been in, we have just been like fighting to survive.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing that could distract us from our reality. So like we're sitting in this pain that just it grounds us so much and it's so raw that like we have no other choice but to create a space of silence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I remember we've talked about this where like emotionally we were hurting so bad like we couldn't watch TV, couldn't
Mm-hmm.
listen to music, couldn't eat. Like it was just like the grief was so strong that like you couldn't do anything but just sit there.
Mm-hmm.
And so because of that, like in those times, I'm like begging him to say something. Like, please talk, please show me, like, please reveal yourself to me. Like, you know, I remember taking walks and like begging him to reveal himself to me. I remember for some reason I'd be, can you please like let a butterfly like land on my shoulder, like so that I know that you're here. He never did that one, but
Well, and it's funny because I know the reason for that particular
Yeah.
thing. Like one thing as you're talking about, God showing himself through different things, like I'm not like I'm not really the type of person that thinks that everything's symbolic. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
look at like, oh my gosh, that branch on the tree is shaped a certain way that has to mean something like this, but I feel like it was probably a couple years ago, and it was just so random because I started noticing, and I feel like it was just kind of like a little tap on my shoulder, just like, hey, check that out, pay attention to that. And I was like, okay. But I kept seeing yellow butterflies
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, and as a 30-year-old man saying I'm focusing on yellow
You're actually
butterflies,
31.
yeah, 31, I yeah. um I don't know why. It just kind of felt like he was saying, like, hey, like, pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because I started obviously recognizing that more and more. But I mean, to Devin's point, like, I would sometimes go for walks and kind of just
Mm-hmm.
have those times where I was, just trying to kind of quiet my mind a little bit, just enjoy, like, just have a couple minutes of just everything else kind of shut down. And there were multiple times where I literally had a butterfly land on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was walking, like it was really weird. And
Must be
another,
nice. I just got a pair of sunglasses. No, I'm just
yeah, yeah. Um, and another way is I feel like and Devin makes fun of me for this. She says I'm getting old because I'm bird watching through this.
kidding.
We have in our backyard, we have a retention pond but we have like probably, I would say 20 feet or so
Yeah.
from our back door to where the drop off is, and there's a fence right at where that drop off is at. And we always have little birds that perch up there, like our cats. I'm sure you can probably see one of, if it's in widescreen, you can see one of them sitting right there. But they love seeing all these little birds and stuff, and it is the weirdest thing because there are times where I'll be, I can see it out of our kitchen. I'll
Mm-hmm.
be making coffee in the morning or something like that, and I'll just kind of have this feeling like you need to look outside right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll look out, and it's a cardinal sitting
Yeah.
right there on our fence. And I don't think it's the same one or anything like that, but it's kind of just one of those things, kind of like you were saying with your son, like, it's not something that God needs to do. He needs to show, but it's just like a nice little, like, gentle reminder sometimes of just like, hey, like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here with you. And the other thing, the bird watching thing, we also have a hawk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why it just appears certain times, and the timing that it appears is so crazy
Yeah.
because it's always when it's in
When
one.
we're upset.
Yeah, it's in the times when we're having a really difficult
Yeah.
time. And I mean, it even kind of became a joke at one point. I was just like, we haven't seen that hawk in like
Yeah, I
six
know.
months, and I guarantee we'll see it today, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I'll go outside and I'll see it, perched up somewhere
Yeah.
where it's just interesting at
Well, I
this
think God
point.
has a very personalized relationship with everyone.
Right.
And it's in faith for us
Mhm.
to be like, the sunglasses were from God, the
Yeah.
yellow butterflies from God. Like, that requires faith. That's what being a Christian is.
Yeah.
So we're not saying like you need to go out and like if you see a yellow butterfly, then that means we each have our own personal relationship. Like, and He knows us so well. He knows what's going to make us feel His presence and.
Well, and what you need at that moment too.
Mhm.
I mean, like we said with the hawk, it always appeared. The hawk always appeared when we were having kind of a low point. We just almost needed something like
I feel like the craziest time with the hawk was we hadn't seen it. We had seen it like flying over or whatever, but I think it was right after your angiosarcoma diagnosis. Maybe it was one of the bad times, and we looked out the window and it was sitting. It was
on
perched
the
up on the
fence.
fence.
Yeah.
I mean, massive
Yeah.
bird.
Yeah.
And like we just felt so strongly that God was like, "I'm here."
Yeah.
Like, I'm right here.
Yeah.
So I think all that to say, like, the things that we've experienced, we aren't special. I think
Mhm.
it's just like our circumstances have brought us to our breaking point, and have allowed us to be in a space with silence and in a space where we don't have distractions because we're just in pain.
Yeah.
And I feel like now I'm able to experience him without the pain because now I know what I need to do. Like now I know the space I need to create, the silence I need to create, and all that stuff to, just kind of experience him. And I've said this before, like I'll go months and months without hearing anything from him or having a weird experience. Like it's not like something that's happening every day.
Mm-hmm.
But there is always just this feeling like, yeah, he's like right there.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what allows us to have peace during a time that's still very scary.
Yeah. Well, and to follow up with that, I think our challenge going forward, if things continue to progress and go smoothly, like we're hoping they will, and kind of follow the recent trend, um, it's having that same mentality, that same
Yeah.
reliance, that same dependence, even as circumstances get better, because that's the whole Old Testament. That's the
Yeah.
whole story of the Israelites and how similar we are to them, where, oh my God, this is so terrible. Help us, please. We
Yeah.
can't survive without you. Oh, you came through? Like,
Okay,
all
we're
right,
gonna do
I'm
our own
I'm
thing.
I'm good now. We're gonna go back to
I'll talk to
doing
you later.
things, and then all of a sudden it goes back down, and oh my God, please help me. And
Yeah.
so I think that having the consistency of knowing that your circumstances, like God is not defined by your circumstances. You are not defined by your circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what is going on around you or in that season of life, like
Yeah.
he is constant, he is consistent, and he's worthy of the same praise and the same reliance that he is when things are going bad or good. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to be something that hopefully, things continue to progress and we get to kind of discuss more about that, because it's, I would say it's a lot more fun to talk about those
Yeah.
times than it is to talk about the challenges and
I feel
struggles.
like another thing too, and this is something that has taken a lot of therapy, and that is that two things can exist at once.
Mm,
And I used to be someone who like literally couldn't do that in every way. Like very much an extremist. Like I'm either eating really healthy or I haven't eaten a vegetable in a week.
yeah.
Like I just wasn't very good at like doing the, both existing at the same time thing. But I feel like what I've learned to do is like right now you're not having treatment. You just had a good scan. Like your beard is growing back. You're working out. Like you feel good. Like but then also you have a scan coming up January 13th.
Hmm.
And then there's that thought in my mind that's like, every single time like he's had a good scan or it seems like it's getting better, you get knocked down again. So like that's probably what's about to happen. So it's like having like it would be unrealistic of me to not have fear for your scan coming up
Yeah.
and not have anxiety. But what I feel like I've been able to do is like let that exist and the joy exist at the same time.
Hmm.
Where before I would just totally give in to fear and anxiety and let it completely steal like what's happening right now today, which
Yep.
is that you feel good and you're not getting chemotherapy right now and don't have a surgery coming up and you don't have another chemo like scheduled. So I feel like the enemy likes to just totally consume you with the bad.
Hmm.
But it does take effort to be like, no, I'm not going to think about that. Like I'm going to live like in the joy right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not easy to do. We've had a lot of practice with that,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. He's wily. He's
yeah,
gonna find. I mean, he's gonna find any little kink in the armor he can, and he's gonna try to turn that kink into a full blown gash, to where he can come in and really wreak more havoc. So,
yeah,
you know, that's not to. I don't think that means we operate. Like I said earlier, we don't operate from a place of fear. Like we can operate from a place of victory, but I do think we have to stand guard on that and be very mindful of, like you said, through therapy, through self awareness, like learning the things about ourselves that we're prone to. I think that's really important, because that also
hmm
helps us be on defense a little bit better. I mean, it just, the first step, I think, in kind of combating is to recognize, like, oh, okay, you're coming in from this direction, so I need to approach it in this way.
hmm
And I don't think that's just from a spiritual standpoint. I feel like that's probably in general.
Well,
Yeah.
and I something I've noticed too is the more that I am like, pursuing God, like listening to worship music or reading the Bible or whatever, the quieter he is. It's almost like if when I'm filling up my brain with like God,
Hmm.
he doesn't have as much space.
Yeah.
And my own sinful nature doesn't have as much space. So like I've just learned the importance of like really being diligent with. I used to feel like it was a task. Like, oh, I've got to read my Bible. Like, let me be a good Christian. And like now it has literally nothing to do with me trying to be a good Christian.
Yeah.
It's like a survival. Like I need this to survive. Like
Yeah. I mean, if you're just reading your Bible to check a box, if you're just saying, a prayer at night before you go to bed, like, "Hey God, thanks for everything. You're the best. Okay, love you. Talk to you tomorrow night." And if you're just doing it to check that box, and it's not really something that's meaningful to you, like out of that relationship, like he just wants you. Like
yeah,
I think he wants
he
somebody
wants
who's
you, not your checklist.
exactly. I think that he cares so much about us that he does like he just wants us to walk with him.
And sometimes my prayers are literally what you just said.
And that's
Like I'm
okay.
tired. I'm like, hey God, like had a great day. Like thank you. Good night.
And if
Like,
and if
and that's
that
just like
is
me
your
and you.
prayer,
We do that. We will be like, hey, like we'll text each other during the day. Like, hey, like how's your day going? Like I'm doing this. Okay, bye.
hmm,
Like we're checking in with each other. We're keeping the communication going. Like,
yeah.
but I'm not doing that to fulfill some sort of like obligation.
Right. You're not doing that like, one of our parents is going to check in and be like, "Did
Did
you
you
text David
pray?
today
Yeah,
and see how
yeah,
he's doing?" Like it just has to be from our heart. And it's weird. I've heard this in like two or three different times like through different things throughout the week, but like the quote, I guess, I think it's from C.S. Lewis when he was talking about writing Narnia. And they're like, "Is this a Christian novel? Like, how did you write this?" And
yeah,
he said, "I don't want this to be defined as Christian, but I want to be so integrated with Christ that when you prick my skin,
yeah.
the blood that comes out is like so intertwined with the blood of Jesus that you
Hmm.
can't tell the difference."
Yeah,
And C.S. Lewis has a really interesting way with words that
yeah.
I think as we unpack it into our lingo, that basically I think is just saying like we just want to be more and more in his image on a day-to-day
Hmm.
basis, and we're walking with him closely and letting him shape us the way that he wants to. I don't tell God how I need to be constructed, how I need to be formed, and like, well, I want to go work on Wall Street, so you need to give me the tools to do that. Like
Yeah.
he didn't design me in that way.
Hmm.
And that's okay. He gave me gifts, he gave you gifts, he gave whoever, as you're listening to this, he gave you specific gifts that are different than ours, but it's for, like you said, his kingdom to grow. It's for his glory. And honestly, like when we're living in that, it helps us operate in a better way too.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like when if we're doing something that's upsetting the other, we're not going to be living in peace and not be as productive
Yeah.
or accomplish as much as we would, if everything was going smoothly and we were operating the way we were supposed to. And that is a very loaded thing.
Yeah.
I understand that. And we're human. I mean, I mess up all the time. And Devin
You
can
do. No, I'm
attest
just
to that.
kidding.
No, she's not kidding. I do. I do a lot. I am a very imperfect person. And I understand that. But like that's why I think there's times when I do mess up that I can go to Devin and say, "Hey, I'm sorry about that. I'm going to
Hmm.
try to do better on it, but I this is what happened. This is what was going on. Like, can we, take that and move forward?" You know what I mean? We just like it's figuring out how to work together.
I think at the end of the day, like it's just about relationship.
Yeah.
Like everything we've experienced comes from a relationship.
Hmm. I think we had an episode earlier like this where we kind of took a detour and
Yeah.
we didn't necessarily intend for it to go in the way it did, but I think this was good. I think that there's hopefully things that can be helpful and apply to somebody listening right now. But one thing before we get wrapped up that I did want to kind of talk for a minute about, I've had a lot of people ask how I'm doing, how we're doing, and I hadn't really given any major update or anything like that, but um, like Devin said, we have the scan here in a few weeks, I guess a little under a month. Um, that's going to be a pretty important scan just to kind of see after being completely removed from chemo treatment, like kind of where does everything stand? And so, um, we've had people that have told us they're praying for us, and that's so, I mean, honestly, like so much more than we could ask for. That's incredible to see just how much people have come around us and continue to do that. And so thank you guys for that. But that is probably the next, I would say, treatment wise, or not treatment, but cancer journey related thing going on. Um, but I've also been able to get back in the gym. I was telling Devin the other day, she probably gets annoyed by it at this point, but I've been doing some running and, like tracking like my VO2 max and stuff like that. And it's been really cool just to be able to see that progress. And it's happened at a much faster pace than I think makes sense medically. So it really has been kind of wild to see how somehow my body's been able to bounce back and continues to do that. And so, um, for the people out there who have been praying for us, like I said, thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. And, your prayers are, I think, definitely answered, even if you don't necessarily see it. Like I've been able to get back in the gym, 5 days a week right now. And I'm running another couple days. And that's something that I did not think 2 months removed from, a pretty intense chemo and after years of chemo that I would be able to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah, that's just a little update. And I don't know. We'll see. I might start tossing a baseball around at some point. We'll see where we're at. I am around a baseball field pretty often,
Yeah.
so I might just have to mess around and see what's going on there. Um, but yeah, like we said, we're gonna pick up at the beginning of the year. We'll try to keep you guys updated, give a little heads up, but I don't know the exact date
I
off the
think it's
top
like
of
the
my head right
7th.
now.
I think that's the first Tuesday. That's not New Year's Day.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, we're really thankful that you guys have joined with us, and as we wrap up 2024, it's been a really cool ride so far. We're excited to see what 2025 does, and in the meantime, we hope you guys have a really Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all the fun stuff. Hopefully, Santa's good to you guys, and if not, then well,
Try to do better
try
next year.
try
No, I'm
try
just
to be on
kidding.
the nice list next year, I guess. But thank you guys as always. Make sure to go on, rate, review, follow us on social media. We're trying to interact and put stuff out as much as possible. So stay with us, and we'll try to entertain you as best as we can. But in the meantime, I'm David.
And I'm Devin.
This has been the 41 Life
See y'all in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. See y'all in
2025.
2025.
Here we go.